Welcome to episode 8, January 15th, 2025, of News with a View, a Fat Cat production. Today is our first day of doing a morning show. It's approximately 10 in the morning, doing a morning show because I will be busy today, but will absolutely try to get a show out this evening on tape. Still having some problems going live, but it will happen, and it will happen shortly. Again, Fat Cat Productions, News with a View, hosted by myself, John A. Costa. Tonight we should have Alice Incognito here, going over some of today's topics. My cold is getting a little bit better. Expect some sniffles and a little cough, but I'm hanging in there. All right, let's start. Today, Pete Hegseth. I mean, that sounds like a name out of Hogsworth. Should be professor there. This is about the confirmation hearing for Department of Defense. And, he had to run the gauntlet. The Democratic senators had their way with him. I think he answered pretty decently. When you talk a lot, you give people on the other side a lot of ammo to come after you. Who was it? Senator Hirona from Hawaii, Democrat, of course, brought up a 2017 sexual assault investigation against Pete. He was never charged and with any crime. An investigation actually turned up nothing, but surprisingly, he did have the alleged accuser sign an NDA. Now, some people go, well, if he didn't do anything, are you really free and clear of it? You had to sign an NDA. Well, a lot of times, an NDA is just one way to end it, not pay $50,000 a year for the next 10 years in legal fees back and forth between attorneys and always have that over your head. Civilly. Criminally, nothing happened. So it just might be easier to write a check out, have the person sign, and, like Donald Trump did. I mean, it's done every day. Every day. But what was interesting is, and I apologize, I'm putting in a cough switch this week, was that this senator from Hawaii, Hirono, said, are you really cleared? Are you really free and clear? Because you had a child out of wedlock. So her idea or implication was that having a child out of wedlock is a crime. I guess to some people, if you have a live birth and you didn't abort it, you're a criminal. But that's just me. Others, senators, brought up more poignant statements that Pete had said earlier about women in combat, that he felt that women should not be placed, or female soldiers, whatever, they should not be placed in direct combat. Now, my question would have been, does this mean a transsexual who identifies as a man but she's a woman, could she go into combat? It's a question. So I'm sure there's not a lot of them, but it's a question. I'm not saying that in certain combat situations women could not fulfill the same obligation as a man. But there are certain situations, let's be real, where that is not feasible. Could they do it? Sure. Could happen. But it's just not feasible. His drinking also a factor, and that's something, that he has had a problem with, or at least was pointed out as being a problem with, and he kind of addressed that. Uh, the bottom line is, in reality, the Democrats, just like the Republican senators, they get their 15 minutes of kick time. So they'll do that, but in reality, Senate is 53% Republicans. I do not think that he will have a problem getting through the Senate. Unless something, of course, comes up in the meantime, but I don't think he'll have a problem with the Senate. The hearings, of course, are going to be argumentative. Excuse me. That's the way it should be. Almost like in a court case where, it's meant to be confrontational. And if you've ever seen Senator Kennedy grill someone, yeah, you wouldn't want to be on that end of the spectrum when he does that. It, you know, it can get bad. And we go back to the LA fires. Uh, President Biden has authorized payments of $770 to the victims in a one-time debit card, which is the usual FEMA response. Got to get these people something. They might have lost everything, have no access to their banks, and at least they could buy underwear and some shoes. If they're still available, they might have to go out of town for it. They might not be available, but it gives them something to put some clothes on their back, and it's not a bad thing. Probably the estimation on that cost would be between 18 and $30 million. Probably more in the end. I don't know what the conditions are to get that, what you have to prove. But I personally just think they're just going to be handing them out and signing, a declaration that they are victims and blah, blah, blah. So it's not free money. This money is going to go to victims. And even if there's 30% fraud, excuse me, it's still helping 70% of the people. And, maybe we'll catch some of those other people. It won't matter, but you're helping people. And it's the right thing to do. California still says, as far as they're concerned, there's no arson involved here. And getting some conflicting reports on that. And again, really too soon. You have people and some high caliber, but they're not police or anything. They're just movie stars and elite that are saying this has been set. I put up a graphic the other day. I'll probably put it on tonight to show the pattern of these fires. And of course, these type of fires, these type of winds, a burning ember could travel miles and start another fire. It's been proven. It happens. About the clearing of the land, that has been lacking. But people also have to realize that the terrain is, uphill. It's not that easy to do. But it could be done. And maybe sections and swaths of area cleared out so that a fire can stay basically contained. Because most of these fires are being spread by the ground. And, Santa Ana winds, been there since Santa Ana. California is basically a desert. So people are, oh, it's a drought condition. It's always a drought in California, in certain areas. Mostly in the L.A. and in the Valley. You got Death Valley. It's not called Pleasure Valley. So that there's a lot going on there, and the interesting thing, and that I picked up in the news, and I was talking about it the one day about contractors, getting contractors. Sip my tea. Is that big home building companies? I'm going to say, maybe a D.A. Horton, a Pulte, who are used to going in and building communities, not single houses. And so they go in and build communities. Those stocks could be something to look at. And again, I'm not a stockbroker. I'm not giving stock advice. I just reading an article where they had said, and again, I say this and not in a bad way, but whenever there's a disaster, there's an opportunity. And this is certainly will be an opportunity for home builders. Now, how they can source all the materials needed in a timely basis to build these, and bring people in and do it all. California has said, and the mayor of Los Angeles said they're cutting through the red tape. This is enough. We've been through fires. This is the worst ever. We're not playing games here. We're going to expedite this. So that will be an interesting event. Let's see how that goes. The other thing in the news about California is, of course, The View. Now, not news with a view, but The Real View with Whoopi Goldberg, who states federal aid with any strings attached, California should not pay the federal government their share, since California is one of the 3 states that don't get what they pay out in federal money back in federal aid. And she's correct. That's a true statement. But in the same token, wasn't she and her gaggle all about the millionaire tax and the billionaire tax and being able to take money, and so they don't have it because they're rich anyway? What do they need more for? Well, can't the same be true for California? What do you need more for? You got more than enough. You're doing great, you're saying. You pay your fair share. So it works both ways, Whoopi. I say there should not be any horrendous strings attached. But certainly you could have federal land management people involved in it to say, this is what we've been recommending you do. And your land management says, no, every fallen leaf, every twig is sacred. Yeah, you can do that, but we're not going to give you any money next time for a fire. They're claiming now that this is an arson, so it won't be a criminal event. I think that will change personally. The insurance companies will fight that, because if it's a criminal event, different parts of your insurance policy kick in. And if it's a natural disaster, well, then other parts of your policy kick in. So, be interesting. this will be interesting. It will be painful to watch people have to go through this process. But Whoopi, there will be strings, and you will pay the federal government. So, better get used to that. There are Republicans who are asking for strings being attached. Tuberville, Senator Tuberville he's a senator, Republican from Alabama. And he's saying there should be strings. No problem with giving the money, but this is what you got to do. Yeah, so, and that will be interesting. Interesting article in People. So Kyler Alvord and Kimberly Speakman, who had wrote it, that using the Smith case language, excuse me, in his report, that Trump would have been convicted of fraud. And the fraud was to induce state officials to ignore vote counts and force his vice president to defer the election. No one was forced. Asking to look for votes, asking to say, hey, I think there's fraud. And remember, everyone came out, no, absolutely no fraud. Not a single case of fraud. And then some cases started showing up. So if Trump would have been called and brought up on these charges, I think the easy thing, all you got to do is find one case of fraud. And there were multiple cases of fraud throughout the country. Nothing so far found that would matter to anything, but fraud is fraud. Can't be a little pregnant, so fraud is fraud. And I think they realized that this was a dog case. It wasn't going to go anywhere. Should Smith have even been, to me, and I still stand by that, he was not empowered to prosecute. He was given that authority through the Senate. Anyone else, no one, the president and the attorney general saying, no, I could use this under the Nixon doctrine, which was really never challenged. And Cannon said that just because it wasn't challenged then doesn't mean it couldn't be challenged now. So, and here are our jets flying around here today from the Myrtle Beach Air Force, the Reserve Air Force Base. So we got a lot of F-18s flying around today. So, I think that it would have been a hard case for him to win if it even got to it, and now it's gone. This will just be filler and and things that they can always throw up. And like I said, just keep bringing out the same piece of toast and bread every time. So it will never go away. Another interesting article that keeps coming up. This is from December. Apparently, the Russians using a oil tanker as part of their covert fleet of spy ships, which everyone does it. No big deal. But this ship was caught by the Finnish government, dragging its anchors and ripping up communication lines and gas lines and trying to cause a general disruption. And it wasn't that someone took the ship anchor fell while the ship was going and, it was dragging and they were trying to get it up. And no, this was sabotage. This was outright deliberate sabotage, according to the Finnish government. And that was part of that East Link power cable and stuff that they have out there. And the ship was the Eagle S. And what was interesting, it was registered out of the Cook Islands, which is in the Pacific somewhere. Interesting because, as far as I'm concerned, you do something like that, that's an act of war. And yeah, you don't get off so easily. And of course, Russia, oh, we deny this, this was an accident. No, they were 12 minutes away from ripping up more cables. And the Finnish have a lot of eyes in the Baltic Sea. And they were following the ship and then watching as this ship crossed all these disturbances. And they even have private companies that go out there and monitor this. And they traced it right to the ship. They went on board. They found the stuff. They found the ship full of equipment that normal oil tanker wouldn't have. And, got statements from some of the people on board and the captain, and they're holding it. So that will come out. That will be more news and more interference from Russia. But again, that's going on all the time. Another thing interesting in the news, President Maduro of Venezuela has called for the invasion of Puerto Rico by Latin American countries in the area and using, Venezuelan and Brazilian forces to bring an end to American colonialism in the area. Whereas, is that a possibility of happening? I highly doubt it. Who they're going to get? Cuba? Maybe when they get their lights turned on. Like Cuba always, they got their medicine, their sports, and their education. The big three. But it appears that they've also forgot the other big three: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I have very little faith in Latin America doing anything. And Trump saying that we should take back Panama. It's, should we have ever given it away? Well, I thought it was a leasing. I actually thought it came up, and it, the goodwill, good faith. I mean, you could have asked for an extension and probably worked out a deal, but there was already talk that it was being outdated, and it wasn't. It wasn't as needed as it was. It was basically to move ships from the Atlantic and Pacific to Atlantic quickly, and it was a military use. We could care if it cost the company, $20,000 more to take a ship around the Horn or wherever, and it just wasn't going to, And then this became a commercial enterprise, and Mexico is threatening to build their own, which, I can't see that happening. But hey, there's a couple of shovels. Go out, have fun. But that's what Venezuela latest. We want to invade Puerto Rico. Probably one of the third most heavily defended areas in our country. Yeah, I don't think that would work out too good for them or anyone else trying that. Another thing that I read in the news today, and it's more of a like, oh, what the F? It seems a hospital in Washington State pulled the plug on the wrong patient. Now, the first thing that jumps to mind, were all these people running that nursing and everything else involved all the way down. Was this DEI hires? Were these, just, you know, how could this happen? How could they pull the plug on the wrong person? It was the Peace Health Southwest Medical Center, and they said a staff person, a nurse, phoned the family and wanted to know and understand uh, if they wanted to keep this patient, David Wells, to keep him on life support. He was brain dead, and they said, "Do you want to keep him on it?" Now, in the meantime, they didn't call David Wells' relatives. They called the person next to David Wells in the same room. Now, I don't know how that conversation went, where they said, is this the family of David Wells? And, where the hospital. I have no idea. I don't know how they would call and get a verbal confirmation over a phone to do that. To say, yeah, hey, shut it down. I'm done. I just don't know how they do that there. Was there a DNR? Was there something that listed this person as, but it never happened. So they called the family of Michael Beechler, I think his name was, and got hold of his sister, but they thought they were talking to the family of David Wells and explained, hey, he's brain dead, but if you want to keep him going, we'll keep him going. And she made the decision. She goes, no, let him go. And that was Debbie Danielson, I think, was the sister. Well, what a shock when Mr. Bleacher called his sister. And she goes, he's dead. Michael, you're dead. They just told me, took you to the funeral home, they're doing whatever with you. How can this be? So she hung up the phone, called the police. The police did one thing. He called in the hospital. And everyone now is doing this. From the hospital to the hospital morgue to the funeral home and to the county coroner. That, you took the wrong body, you did this, and not only did they take the wrong body, but apparently they gave the deceased body parts to other people against the family wishes. That was not the wish of the family, but they did it. So you can imagine the lawsuits that's going on. And plus, they never told the family of David Wells that the death was due to a mix-up. So everyone's suing. The family Beechler and Davidson are suing them because they go, oh my God, horrible. And Debbie Davidson is saying, I said yes, not knowing that that was that person. I ended a person's life. And of course, the family of David Wells is, of course, suing. We wanted our father to stay alive. Who knows what would have happened? So, talk about being dead wrong. But that that is what is going on. I'd like to go back a bit and talk about this, more on the Trump Smith case. It's not going to go away. This was a real miscalculation on the Biden administration and the Department of Justice. It never had any legs. They knew from the beginning of the insurrection that you didn't need to be a lawyer to understand that you can't have an insurrection if you're already in power to keep your power. I don't know if that's an insurrection. So it was a 100-year-old law that really has never been exercised. And the reason it wasn't exercised was because it was meant for focused on the Civil War and the Confederacy when they came back into the Union. Remember, all the people took an oath to the Confederacy and abandoned their rights as a Union citizen. So they had to really, in essence, take an oath back into the Union. But all was not forgiven. There were clauses in there, and that's the insurrection and treason and all that, where they didn't want leaders from the South to ever get back into authorities and governments. And that's why if you were found guilty of it and weren't hung, that was it for you. I think in certain cases things were appealed and some of that went away. But that was the language that was in there, and that stuck. And them going to it was the silliest and far-fetched thing I have ever heard any of these politicians do, and we've heard them do some pretty silly stuff. That is probably one of the single most reasons why Trump won. Because Trump was using his First Amendment right to say, I was cheated. I was swindled. There's no fraud with that. And there was nothing like that. Now, again, like I said, the case of his documents, a little bit different. Because there is absolute language to pertain to that. And the idea that, a president has, power that he can use without speaking. Well, I declassified that. Well, there's a process of doing that. And taking it and then saying it afterwards, became a problem. Some of those papers were personal papers. Some of them were not. And he just was not going to give up ground on it. So Cannon then said, well, you know, argue. And then when push really came to shove, the attorneys, of course, said, hey, how is this guy authorized to prosecute? And the law is pretty, the rules for that date back to Nixon on some of it. And Cannon said, well, no, just because someone didn't argue it doesn't mean they can't. And they did. And she said, no, he wasn't appointed in the correct manner. All the evidence could be perfectly good, but he was never authorized as a prosecutor, as an investigator, to gather that and perform a prosecution. Now, the FBI could have done it. There's a lot of people that could have done it, and they go, well, we'll go back and do it the right way. No, boy, no. Doesn't work that way. And that's why you got to be real careful when you're going to charge someone that they're charged correctly and properly. Of all the baloney with Trump, everything from statewide to federal-wide, probably the document case probably had the most meat on the bone. And not that they would have done anything. They didn't do anything to Hillary. They slapped your hand. And they didn't do anything to Biden because Biden was, her had said, the special prosecutor, he was investigator, said that he was just a harmless old man and probably could not help in his defense. I took him, but I don't remember when, and they were in my garage. I didn't know what and he just said, all right, they from what we saw, no one ever got to him, and he took stuff from the Senate, which he was not authorized to do, and stuff from the vice president's office and stuff, but and you can argue all you want with that, but it's meaningless. In the sense that it's meaningless that they didn't do anything to him. They said we're not going to prosecute because he's old. He meant well, and he's a nice guy. Now, they could have did the same thing with Trump, just saying that, hey, he took it. Again, Biden didn't fight any of it. Biden said, you can come into my house and you could examine everything. You go through. You don't need a search warrant. I voluntarily opened my front door, and find what you find. Of course, in the background, his lawyers all said that you can only look for documents pertaining to classified material that he should not have. If they found Hunter Biden's cocaine in a drawer that he had no idea was there, that would have been left, and would not have been brought up. So they were very specific on what they were allowed to look for. Even though they said, they can look anywhere, and that wasn't the truth. And that's fine. I could get there, You have lawyers there to protect your rights and to see how far they could push those rights. And, they're there to protect you because you don't know your rights. There are lawyers that don't understand all their rights. But he voluntarily did it, and that made it a lot less confrontational. And yes, they found stuff, and then they found stuff again, and then, all right, you know, and he never at first denied it. And then he could use plausible deniability. Well, I denied it because I didn't even know it was there. Yeah. I had just left office. My son died. I was putting stuff in there, and I didn't care. Whatever it was, keep it in the garage. So you could get there. You could say, yeah, all right, yeah, I can buy that. And with Trump, on the other hand, you know, and even in Biden's case, the House had Secret Service protection. Mar-a-Lago had Secret Service protection, so it just wasn't like it was in my living room, and everyone that went through it was, hey, you want to see this? Look what it says about this tank. No, it wasn't done that way that we know of. And that's it. That's what I'm. That's where I am today. Tonight, we go into detail on fires and more of the Smith report and some other little tidbits. I like finding anything out in New York, and it might be meaningless. And Alice Incognito wants us to do more locally focused stuff and go after those things and look after it. I don't. It's local stuff, Mailman bites dog, All right. Like I said, this is episode 8, morning show. I'm going to put this up in about an hour. It takes about an hour to put some edits and comments and little tidbits that I throw in there afterwards. I do not do it live. God, I hardly drink my tea and push this button. But basically, that is our show for today. And we will be doing our live show this evening. When I say live show, not live. If I can make it happen live, I will, but I really doubt it. And we'll still put it to tape and the digital media, and put it out later. And the website is up, and it's working okay. I really have to have my nephew. I just might ask him, hey, give me a price to fix this. He's a WordPress expert. I'll give you some free advertising too, but you got to put food on your plate too. So we'll work something out. And because I hate WordPress, very powerful, very good. People love it. I don't. I need something really simple. Drag, tell me what it does, and that's it. And that's basically it for right now. I'm going to render this, get it out the door, and this will be up in a little bit. So, episode 8, morning show, first morning show. All right, everyone. I'm going to take off, finish my tea as I fade to black.